Let's get started. So we're talking about the capital budget today. Senate Bill 5195 is our bipartisan capital budget. The capital budget will make tangible improvements in every county of the state, from Aberdeen's North Shore Levee to Zilla's Yakima Valley Public Market. Over the past several weeks, I've signed dozens of bills to improve housing in our state, including allowing more veterans to qualify for property tax relief, making it easier to convert existing buildings and housing, reducing housing permit timelines, and helping manufactured homeowners. This budget helps fund those important efforts and builds on them. To give you a sense of scale, it includes $772 million for housing and homelessness, including the largest investment in the Housing Trust Fund in state history, $600 million. The Housing Trust, we can give a fist pump for that one, right? Yeah, we do that, right? The Housing Trust Fund helps build homes for those most in need. This budget invests $975 million on K through 12 education, including funding for school construction, seismic retrofits, and modernization projects for small districts and tribal compact schools. Education is, of course, our paramount duty, and our kids need safe, well-functioning buildings in order to learn. This budget also helps address Washington's behavioral health crisis by investing $466 million in behavioral health facilities. That includes funding to complete the new forensic hospital at Western State and $130 million for community-based facilities. And it creates recreational and economic opportunities for Washingtonians by investing $120 million for the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program. This is our state's largest public program for outdoor community projects, including local sports fields and hiking trails. On a personal note, I'm going to be working with our chair on more turf softball fields for fast-pitch softball players next year. As the proud dad of a fast-pitch softball player, I know there's a desperate need for more turf fields. So I scoured the budget looking for those, and so I look forward to working with all of you to add more next year as well. But in all seriousness, hey, these projects don't just help kids, but they help our economy as well. I know, I'm diverting for a moment, but my wife and I spend much of our time traveling through the Northwest, going to softball tournaments. I know we're staying in hotels, we're buying our food, we're investing in the economy. These things help kids, and they help our whole economy. I did veto some sections of this budget. Broadly speaking, these vetoes address items that are outside the scope of agency's authority or otherwise not achievable in the given timeline or require more engagement with tribes or other interested parties. Big thank yous, big thank yous, big thank yous. So first, for everybody here, I so appreciate that, the folks who are here are obviously a small subset of many folks who obviously engage with our legislators on the budget. We all know that. But it's a reflection of different communities coming together on a budget that really invests in core services for our kids and for our future. So we appreciate each and every one of you for doing that. Many legislators, of course, were involved in this process. A big thank you to our budget chairs and ranking members. I'll start first and foremost with Senator Yasmin Trudeau. Let's give her a round of applause for her hard work. Also, Representative Chapman, Senator Mark Schessler, Representative Steve Theringer, who I'm told is in jury duty as we speak, and Representative Mike Steele. But it takes a real team effort. And Senator, I know you've put a lot of time into this, and coming up with a bipartisan package like this, it is not easy, and it takes a lot of folks coming together and compromising and listening and making it work. And so, I know I don't want to put you in the spot, but do you want to take a moment to say a few words about the budget? Sorry, excuse me. Go right ahead.
Sure. So one, as a new chair, I am just so incredibly proud of all the people that contributed to this work and the fact that we were successful. We were unanimous. We were bipartisan, unanimous in the Senate. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure unanimous or close to unanimous in the House. So I'm just really, really proud. There were only two things that we wanted to make sure, and that's that we were responsive and that we were responsible. And I just couldn't thank you, Governor Moore, for taking the opportunity to sign it and for everybody that showed up and put their hard work into it.
Absolutely.
It's a dream.
Thanks, Senator. And you may be a new budget chair. I'm a new governor. So but between the two of us and with the help of everybody else, we're ready to sign this.
Great.
I think I need to sign two things. Is that right? Wonderful. Okay. All right. This one is already signed, so we're good there. And now, Senator, I can sign this capital budget. Thanks for all your work. You bet. And a round of applause, everybody, for all the hard work that was. And let's take a photograph, everybody.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Congratulations, everybody. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm very ask you to sign for the signature. This is just for,
Oh, just something for him?
yeah.
Just for Jesse?
Yes. Thank you very much.
You bet. Hey, good to see you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. That's yours, and that's for you as well.
He wants a couple.
Oh, sorry. This is the pen I signed. Is that right? Did I give you the pen already or not? That's the pen. All right. Almost. There we go. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There we go. Thanks so much. Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you.
I think actually, let's hold on to that. I realize I probably, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, you need to sign. Okay, take one quick one. Okay, one quick photo op.
Make it quick.
Yep.
Okay, make it quick.
We're taking a picture? Let's do it. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you next time.
You're staying here, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Great. Because
just
next
me
up,
and you, I guess.
is that
Okay.
right?
Yep, for the bond, we gotta pay for the
We
stuff
have
in
to,
the capital budget.
we have to pay for it. And so
I did the
Sheila-
same thing on the floor.
Is that right?
Forgot
That's
about
right.
the bond.
And I'm just signing this, so okay. So I'm just making, and this I can give to you.
Find your window.
Okay. And you should keep that.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Next up, Senate Bill 5194 authorizes the State Finance Committee to issue up to $4.68 billion in state general obligation bonds. These bonds finance important projects in the capital budget. This budget was passed unanimously in both chambers. I'm very proud of the broad bipartisan support for this legislation and deeply appreciate all the very hard work that went into this. These times are not easy in negotiating deals with political bodies, so the fact that this reflects unanimous support of folks with very different political perspectives, to put it very mildly, I think is a testament to the hard work of everybody who really leaned into this work. And so it's really an honor to sign this legislation. I especially want to thank the prime sponsor, who we had a chance to talk about just a moment ago. That, of course, is Senator Trudeau, and companion bill sponsor, Representative Steve Theringer. So I'll use two pens for this, if that's okay with you, Senator. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure that Representative Theringer, who again, jury duty calls for him, but we want to make sure that he receives a pen as a token of our appreciation for his hard work as well. With that, let's all take a photo.
1, 2, 3.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, now I can dance out.
Now you get. Okay, so this is Theringer.
And that letter's been signed, so I will
Great.
stick
That's
that.
perfect. No, that's no problem. We'll get it figured out. No, it's no. We're good. We're good. Okay. So next up, everybody, will be transportation. And then. We're ready. Yep. Hey, glad you could make it. Awesome. Marco could not make it. I think. Once again, you did not. I'm so glad. Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, everybody. Come on in. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
You're staying right here, right?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Okay.
Come on in, everybody. Are you coming in for the bill site? Don't be shy. Come on in. Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Okay, I'll make sure I've got the right thing, and I've got the right thing. Okay. I'm not missing anyone here, right? In terms of the, but she's here. Yeah, but in terms of the ranking members and the right, I've got that right. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Okay, cool. Oh, and this is, and Bill Ramos was very involved.
Yes, he was.
So I'm going to say a few words
He
about it.
negotiated
Yes.
a couple years ago the House budget, so.
Got it.
'cause he was the vice chair there too.
Yes, I'll say a few words there.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for being here and all the work. Really appreciate it. That's a huge help. Okay, I'm pleased to sign Senate Bill 5161, our bipartisan transportation budget. Legislators worked extremely hard to overcome a $1 billion shortfall in this budget over the next 6 years, while making important investments in our transportation infrastructure. This budget does a good job of balancing needs across the system, But of course, we recognize we have significant challenges ahead. Washington State ferries need to replace 13 aging vessels by 2040 in order to maintain existing service. With climate change, we're seeing an increased number of slides and washouts. We'll need additional funding to both address these issues as they happen, while also working to make our existing system more resilient. The budget maintains current funding for WashDOT's maintenance and preservation programs, which I deeply appreciate. That said, we all know, and we've talked a lot about the need for additional funding down the road soon to restore our system to a good state of repair. So we have many, many challenges, but I just so appreciate the hard work of so many folks under challenging circumstances to put together a budget that does so much for our state. Some highlights, and this is a non-exclusive list, but some highlights from our transportation budget include more than $1 billion to fix culverts, making an important step forward in meeting our obligations under our court order to remove fish passage barriers. $1.3 billion for new ferries, which are desperately needed. $1.4 billion in funding from the Climate Commitment Act, which will support electrification and alternative fuels, public transportation, ferries, and rail and freight programs, and so much more. $16 million on initiatives to help the Washington State Patrol improve recruitment and retention, and funding to keep critical projects moving forward, as just two examples, including the interstate bridge replacement and the North Spokane corridor. I did make some vetoes in this budget. Broadly speaking, these changes remove unfunded work, eliminate sections that conflict with other statutes, funding that supported bills that didn't ultimately pass, and assume savings that did not materialize. We so appreciate everybody who made this possible. We recognize this is a lot of work to bring together a diverse group of legislators to come together and land on a package like this that will really move our state forward. I want to especially call out the leadership of our budget chairs and ranking members, Senator Marco Leos, Senator Curtis King, Representative Jake Fye, Representative Andrew Barkus as well. I will just take a moment. The late State Senator Bill Ramos, of course, was very involved in this effort right up to his last days. And so, it's been a huge, losing Senator Ramos has just been, a massive impact, as you can imagine, here. And we had a really beautiful service on Sunday that many folks here were able to attend. I don't think I've ever seen so many people at a service in my entire life. I mean, it was like 1,000 people were there, which is a real testament to Senator Ramos. I know his wife Sarah very well. We've talked a lot about how deeply invested he was in this particular work. And so we're thinking about Bill as well. And I think with that, we will sign, while thinking about Bill, sign this important bill. I'm going to try to find a way to use 5 pens, 4 for our chairs and ranking members, and 1 for Sarah, Bill's wife, as well. Okay, so here we go. This one, Sheila, can I just hand this one to you right now so I don't lose track of this? Sheila, can I hand this one to you? This is for Sarah. I just don't want to lose track of that. Thanks. Appreciate everybody's patience on this. A round of applause for Representative Fye for his leadership, by the way. And we will make sure we are using enough pens for those folks. Excellent. And let's all take a picture, everybody.
All right, in the back, make sure you have a spot to look through there. Good. Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Round of applause, everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Thanks again. Yes. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yeah, we got to do what we got to do. Yeah. All right. Awesome. And which one is? Are you staying here? I'm guessing.
Yes.
Thanks for your patience. We're working through a lot of paper here. Okay. I'm going to give this to this guy right here.
I'm going to stay with you.
Those are for you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so make sure I'm doing this right. Okay. And we've got who we need here. Perfect. Okay. Thanks again to you both. Yep. Senate Bill 5801 provides funding to account for the rising costs associated with upkeeping our state's transportation system. This bipartisan revenue bill will help our state prepare to meet the challenges posed by our aging transportation infrastructure. I am vetoing a section of this bill that sets an unrealistic limit on overhead costs for the Department of Licensing, aligning the limit with current longtime practice. We so appreciate the hard work of all the legislators I know I've said that before, but I will say it again, like I really recognize how much work goes into a bill of this. Just so the folks on TVW can see it as one example, the work that goes into a project like this. And also really appreciate the prime sponsor of this legislation, that is State Senator Marco Lias. Also appreciate the leadership of Senator King on this bill and the leadership of Representative Jake Fye as well. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And let's take a photo.
One, two, three.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, you bet. Thanks. Yeah. For Curtis King. For Curtis King. Oh, sorry. For Marco. My apologies. For Marco. Yes. We got a lot of bills. Okay. So do we, okay, we're good. So next up is Senate Bill 5802 on the transportation funds. Awesome. Thanks so much for the help.
Sure.
All right. Okay, Senate Bill 5802 helps stabilize and optimize funding for transportation infrastructure. This bill restructures how transportation-related funds are transferred and allocated within the state's budget. Specifically, it ensures proper allocation of tax revenues, reinforces fiscal responsibility, and accelerates debt repayment on deferred taxes. This legislation is designed to better support long-term transportation infrastructure financing strategies in Washington State. We appreciate the hard work of everybody involved in this legislation, including the prime sponsor, Marco Lias, and also State Senator June Robinson, who's been a real leader on many budget issues. Please give her a round of applause for her hard work this session, which is deeply appreciated. And with that, let's take a photo.
One, two, three.
Great.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, that's Marco. And next up, House Bill 2077.
All right, 2077, enter the conference room. Okay, here we go. All right.
Thanks again, you guys. Good to see you again. We're getting the band back together, I see.
All right, so
Is Joe able to make it? Come on in. Oh, by all means, come on in, everybody.
I don't
Step
see
right
Joe.
in, no problem. Yep. Come on in, everybody. Thanks so much. Come in.
Yeah.
Yep. By all means, please join.
Okay.
Got everybody? Excellent. Thanks so much. Zero emission vehicle compliance credits are part of our state's Clean Vehicles program that requires auto manufacturers to sell increasing percentages of new zero emission vehicles in Washington State. Manufacturers who exceed sales requirements for zero emission vehicles accrue credits that they can bank for future model years or sell to other manufacturers who may be short on their targets. House Bill 2077 imposes an excise tax on excess credits. Revenue from this tax will go toward electric vehicle rebates for low-income families and support the development of electric vehicle infrastructure, which we desperately need here in Washington State. We so appreciate the hard work of everybody who made this legislation possible. We especially appreciate the work of the prime sponsor of this legislation, and that is State Representative Joe Fitzgibbon, for his work on this bill, which I'm pleased to sign into law. Excellent. Let's take a picture.
Ready, one, two, three.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We should probably just.
Thank you. Don't go too far away.
It's like Captain.
Joe.
You know.
Yep, you got it.
Actually, it's, you know, next, you do whatever you want. You know,
This is the one that's next, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
because this one, you know.
Wonderful. And I think we've got, a few more.
Yes.
Glad y'all are here.
All set? Wonderful. House Bill 2081 imposes new business and occupation taxes and raises existing B&O tax rates in Washington State. While raising rates like these are always tough decisions, this bill generates revenue necessary to balance our budget. It also helps fund public schools, healthcare, social services, and many other programs and services that benefit all Washingtonians. We intend to continue discussing these tax increases with the legislature and business community over the interim. Right now, I want to thank everybody who's worked so hard on this legislation and throughout this budget process, try and balance a really challenging budget year. It's been a lot of hard work. Particularly big thank you to the prime sponsor, of this legislation, which is Representative Joe Fitzgibbon. Did I have that right?
He's the companion, but.
I'm so sorry, to have it backwards?
Oh, you do have it backwards, actually. It's
So
both-
is,
it's both of them.
we can adjust, so but is
It's
Rebecca the prime?
She's the prime of the Senate companion, and Representative Fitzgibbon is the prime of the bill that passed.
Perfect,
Yep.
great. Okay, so thank you to the prime sponsor, Representative Joe Fitzgibbon, for this bill, and thank you to Senator Rebecca Saldana for sponsoring the companion bill.
Yep.
Always good to have a second set of eyes on this.
Yep.
And with that, we'll sign this legislation into law. Let's take a photo, everyone.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Thanks so
Great.
much.
All right.
Okay,
Let's keep on going.
keep on going. Thanks. We're all just double checking.
Oh, Claire.
This is mine.
Let's see, switch up.
Yes, if this is Claire, perfect.
What?
Is Representative Street here? No,
He's
no,
not.
okay, just want to make sure.
There we go.
Okay. Senate Bill 5813 makes changes to the capital gains and estate taxes. For the capital gains tax, it increases the tax rate from 7% to 9.9% for capital gains over $1 million. For the estate tax, it raises the threshold to pay the tax to $3 million and allows the threshold to be adjusted for inflation over time. It also matches the family-owned business deduction to $3 million. This will protect small family-owned businesses and ensure they're able to take full advantage of estate tax deductions. At the same time, this bill also changes the structure of the estate tax to make it more progressive, with the highest taxes levied on estates worth $9 million or more. This will help address our budget shortfall. That's a theme you'll be hearing throughout our afternoon, these conversations. So appreciate all the hard work, again, of everybody in the legislature who worked so hard on a challenging situation. We also appreciate the hard work of the prime sponsor of this legislation, State Senator Claire Wilson, and thanks to our companion bill sponsor, Representative Street. And I'm going to sign this legislation into law. Senator, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, and let's take a photo.
Alright, you roll it back. Perfect. Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Keep going.
Keep going.
I think we got a couple more, right?
Swap.
Great. Noel, this is you, I think, right?
Indeed it is.
Are we good? Okay. We look right? Yep. Okay, good.
Sorry. You're good, you're good, you're good.
All set? Great. Senate Bill 5814 imposes sales tax on certain services and subjects nicotine products to other tobacco products tax. Specifically, this bill imposes sales tax on various IT services, temporary staffing services, advertising services, among others. This bill raises revenue necessary to balance our budget. As mentioned before, we'll be working with legislative leaders to continue our conversations around these tax increases and with the business community over the interim. We so appreciate the hard work once again of everybody involved in this legislation. A special thank you to the prime sponsor, that is Senator Noel Frame, and also to the companion sponsor, Representative Stonier, for their hard work. Thank you, appreciate that. Yep. All right, picture time.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, everybody. I think we have one
One
more,
more.
is that right?
Yeah, Senator Solomon cannot be here, so
Got it, okay.
we are standing in.
Yep.
Jesse Solomon, the background.
Just, let me just take care of that now.
Maybe you already signed that.
Okay, that's where I sign. Sorry, give me 1 second, you guys. Sometimes there's multiple pieces of paper here. Okay. And Jesse, you said it's not,
He can-
right?
yeah,
Oh,
I
no
talked to
problem.
him
Yep,
this morning.
yep, just want to make sure. Cool. Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay.
Jesse Solomon.
You gotcha, you gotcha.
Senate Bill 5794 removes certain exemptions from business and occupation taxes. These changes will generate revenue necessary to balance our budget. I'm vetoing the portion of this bill that repeals the mortgage interest deduction for community banks, a B&O tax deduction community banks can take for interest they receive on residential loans. This exemption helps community banks stay competitive with larger lending institutions and maintain access to loans for home buyers in our challenging housing market. Housing affordability is a major challenge for many Washingtonians. Repealing this deduction will significantly increase lending. Repealing this B&O tax deduction would significantly increase lending costs for community banks at a time we are trying to keep housing expenses as low as possible. We so appreciate the hard work of everybody on this piece of legislation as well, including the prime sponsor who's unable to be here with us today. That is State Senator Jesse Solomon. We appreciate his hard work and the work of many others to put together a balanced package that I can sign into law. Excellent. Thanks so much, everybody. Let's take one more picture.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Awesome.
Right?
Thanks.
Thank you.
No, really appreciate it.
You
Yeah,
bet.
yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Is the next one over?
Oh, my God.
I think next is,
The baby.
The baby? You wanna switch?
by all means, yeah. Great.
The big goat.
Jesse, let me get a sip of water.
Everybody else is just.
Is there anybody else that's? Katie, you wanna get? Yeah. I was like, she should have been in the room once.
Okay,
Okay, who's
just
not
make
in?
sure. Got all
Molly?
my points correctly. Yes, I have June.
It's the budget.
And I got the budget writers there, right? Okay, just want to make sure now. We
Is
have
there
a lot of,
anybody that's-
trying to make sure we're not. Perfect,
Whoever.
okay.
There was nobody else on there.
No,
problem.
we were the last ones. There's nobody else on mine, at least when we were out there. Okay.
Okay. Okay, I think we are ready, and this is our last one, correct? Okay. It better be, right? Yeah, okay. All right, and last but not least, from our budget bills, I'll be signing our operating budget, Senate Bill 5167. Once again, appreciate the hard work of everybody here and many others who couldn't make it, who really dug in to bridge a $16 billion budget shortfall. For the past few weeks, I've had a chance to go through the budget line by line with my team, and I know in doing that, that there were cuts made by the legislature that I'm sure were not easy to make, that was very, very clear. In the same way, I made some changes that, are not easy for anybody. But when you have a challenging budget situation like this, everyone's just got to lean. I just so appreciate everybody who's really done that here. That said, importantly, this budget maintains and protects our core services and makes significant investments in education and healthcare. We're starting to see news articles about other states that are cutting some of those core services. In Washington, we're holding the line. This budget adds more than $1 billion in new spending on K through 12 education, including $800 million in new spending on special education. As a son of a special education teacher, I deeply appreciate the legislature's leadership and investment in this area in particular. This budget also supports working families by maintaining key programs, including, and this is obviously a very incomplete list, but I did want to highlight a few examples. Despite the budget challenges, all current cash benefit assistance programs that benefit Washingtonians, like TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, remain intact. Current Medicaid eligibility, ensuring Washingtonians on Medicaid will not lose their state coverage. All current food assistance, including SNAP. We held the line on all those important programs as well. We held the line on programs that provide financial assistance and services for Washingtonians who do not qualify for federal programs. The operating budget provides $25 million to the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance to help new arrivals to our state. It provides $14 million in legal aid for asylum seekers, undocumented immigrants, and refugees. Even after making some reductions, we will still have the most generous financial aid program for college and apprenticeships with the Washington College Grant and the College Bound Scholarship. Those are all things we should be very proud of in facing, and this was I want to be clear, for the interest of time, I had to keep that list short, but I could have gone on much longer with a much longer list of items that the legislature just really, really prioritized in a really difficult situation. It's not easy being new to the budget situation, but I had the chance to go through it and really recognize the hard work that is really reflected in this very, very detailed document. So thank you all very much. This budget also, importantly, preserves our rainy day reserve funds. That's critical for many reasons. I'll just mention two. It likely preserve our AAA bond rating, which is really critical for us as we make investments in projects all across our state. It also helps prepare us for looming cuts from the Trump administration. We need to have dollars in reserve so our excellent Office of the Attorney General can make legal challenges. Those takes time to get those injunctions that put a stop to illegal actions. Having a rainy day reserve fund gives us some flexibility and also the possibility of backfilling dollars that might be removed from the federal government. I did make some vetoes to this budget. These items are important that I had to veto, but I anticipate more fiscal challenges in our future and funding cuts from the federal government, so we need to be as lean as possible. I so appreciate everybody who's worked so hard on this budget. At the risk of, we can't leave folks out, but I do want to highlight, of course, the budget writers, Senator June Robinson, Representative Tim Ormsby, Senator Derek Stanford, Representative Nicole Macri, and Representative Mia Gregerson. Please give them all a big round of applause for their hard work. I'm going to take a moment to thank my team. Katie Chapman C. leads that team, and Katie is probably,
Right here.
oh, I'm glad, okay. Close by Claire Wilson, close to Senator Wilson. And, Katie, you and your team have really been outstanding. I so appreciate it. So it's a bonding experience going through the budget process. And so, I'm new to KD, and KD's new to me, and I'm new to her team, and her team's new to me. So it's been, you spend a lot of time together going through a budget like this, as you all know extremely well. And so I just really deeply appreciate, my team's hard work. I asked a lot of them these past 120 days, I guess it's been, under really challenging circumstances. I just think you all did a really great job. So thank you very much. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to sign this budget. Okay. Now I'm going to use multiple pens if that's okay. Okay. Give me 1 second, everybody. Okay. Okay, this is going to set a record for me, June. Someone told me that the most pens ever used by a president was 80. So we will not use 80. We're not use 80. This will be 6. I want all the budget writers to have pen, and also, if it's okay, one for Katie. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Almost there. And I think one more if my math is right. Katie. Thank you very much. Thank you. Round of applause. Let's take a photo, okay?
Yes.
Everyone right here, ready, 1, 2, 3.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Just really appreciate it. Okay, so let me make sure I know what I'm doing. So this, I'm going to, right, exactly. No, thank you so much,
Yeah.
appreciate it. So we've signed everything, right? So give me just 5 minutes, everybody, and I'll be right back. We're going to get the chairs in for the media, I think, so we'll answer some questions, but just give me 5 minutes and I'll be right back. Hey, Ian, can we clear off any pens here and stuff? You don't mind, that'd be great. And I think in the bill, I just need 5 minutes and I'll be right back. Okay. Patience and being here, we really appreciate your time. I have a few thoughts and happy to take your questions. So this session was challenging in multiple ways. We're facing some challenges with the Trump administration, which has been clear about its intentions to gut various programs. About 20% of our state budget comes from the federal government, and so obviously those impacts will be significant for our state if those cuts occur. It's also been difficult on the personal side. I think the loss of Senator Bill Ramos has been really profound. Friday, I was at a bill signing at his wife Sarah's home, at their home, for his final 4 bills. Sunday was a memorial service that many of you attended. And his loss is felt by all of us. Senator Chris Gildon tragically lost his wife, Autumn, in the final days of the legislative session. Frank Chop, Ralph Monroe, 2 real icons in Washington state politics, also passed away during the session. So, I just want to say my prayers are with their families, and I think that, the challenges that we have from the federal government, challenges we have with a $16 billion shortfall, combined with obviously some deep personal loss that I think have been really felt by legislators and staff and everybody who works in Olympia, it'd be hard to overstate the impact on all of us on those challenges. So beginning with my inaugural address, I've emphasized a number of key points for our budget. Use realistic revenue projections, preserve our rainy day reserves, find billions of dollars in savings and efficiencies, including a $100 million grant program for more law enforcement officers, increase investments in affordable housing, and increase our investments in K through 12 education. The budgets I signed today accomplish those goals. Throughout this budget process, I've also insisted that the legislature take a balanced approach to solving the $16 billion budget shortfall. Look, it became clear early on, I think I was at a press conference here in my first couple of weeks where I said, hey, we're not going to be able to tax our way out of this. It became equally clear early on in the process that we weren't going to cut our way out of it, right? That a balanced approach was going to be needed in order to balance this budget and still provide core services to the people of our state. That is why I rejected an initial proposal to raise $21 billion in taxes. I then rejected, as you know, a subsequent $12 billion tax proposal as unsustainable. I deeply appreciate the legislature heard those concerns and dramatically reduced the revenue assumed in the final budget. As I promised we would, we spent the last 20 days going through the budget in great detail, and I'm proud that the budget I'm signing today, protects core services. I walked through some of those core services a little bit earlier, so in the interest of time, I won't repeat those. But those core services are preserved in an important way and reflect meaningful improvements in our budget process to help avoiding finding ourselves in this situation in the future. We don't control that. The economy could go south in a way that has a big impact on us. Those cuts from the federal government could be significant and even dire. But we made some important changes in how we do our budgeting, including the fact that our operating budget this year is based on our actual revenue forecast from the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council, rather than spending to the 4.5% maximum limit allowed by the law. I also appreciate that we preserved our rainy day reserve fund, which will be really critical for us as we face challenges from the federal government that loom for us in our future. I want to add that I support virtually all the difficult decisions the legislature made in terms of reductions. There were many times going through the budget line by line with my team where I would say, hey, whoa, that's a tough cut they made. And I appreciate that. Many of those cuts are not easy, and that's an understatement. I know those aren't easy because I made some myself that are reflected in the vetoes. That said, there are a few of the reductions that I will be reviewing with my team and stakeholders in the interim leading up to the next supplemental budget, including the reduction to the Abortion Access Project. We receive our next revenue forecast in June, as you know. Speaking candidly, I'm not optimistic there's going to be an improvement in our financial situation. So that's why we try to be thoughtful as we went through the budget. Again, many good programs, many worthwhile programs that the legislature made cuts to, and that I felt I needed to add to as well. Bottom line is we just don't think we can afford those right now. The vetoes that I went through, you'll see numerous smaller items, smaller in a relative sense, right? $300,000 is a lot of money to any Washingtonian in the scale of a multi-billion-dollar budget. It's obviously relatively small, but being small was not necessarily a deterrent for me, right? If we just felt we just couldn't afford it right now, we made those vetoes. Those vetoes of relatively smaller items total approximately $25 million. The revenue that I signed will likely require adjustments in the future. These revenue bills, as you know, move through the legislative process quickly, particularly changes to the B&O tax and sales tax on services. We already know that there may be unintended consequences that need to be addressed. We've heard from many individuals about that, many entities, and so we've already had conversations with legislators, with my team, about, after a well-deserved vacation for my team, getting to work on reviewing those, hearing from folks, and seeing what adjustments might need to be made for the supplemental budget from some of the revenue that I signed into law today. The budget certainly reflects hard work, and it certainly reflects compromise. I just really want to extend my thanks to the legislators of both parties. You heard transportation budget, capital budget, bipartisan. Folks really lean into it, and just appreciate the service of everybody who helped make this budget possible. I also just want to briefly mention, I think we signed 422 policy bills into law, and I think it's fair to say that we made significant progress on addressing a number of important issues. I won't go into these in detail, but I do think it's worth emphasizing the importance of the legislature's work on trying to make sure we can construct more affordable housing in the state. You've heard me say it before when I ran for governor. It's the issue I heard most frequently as I traveled to all 39 counties, and I should have a exact number of how many bills related to housing development I signed. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 20 or so. It's a lot of bills, streamlining our processing, making things more efficient, not requiring so much parking, bill after bill after bill, most of them bipartisan, to really lean into that. And the investments that I talked about earlier into housing, I think will be significant and will help us make progress on those important issues. We have bills that protect young people entering the workforce, ensuring the state has the tools we need to hold employers who try to exploit them accountable. We made more than $1 billion in new investments in K through 12 education. We made the biggest overhaul of our recycling system in decades. We fulfilled our promise for farmers to get fuel exemptions under the Climate Commitment Act. We are making our community safer by establishing the $100 million grant program to hire more law enforcement officers, a core promise, obviously, I made in my campaign and in my inaugural address. So this session, we made investments in issues that are critical to Washingtonians. We also made hard, but I think fiscally responsible choices. And I think there are plenty of things in the budget that, if I was the only one writing the budget, I would write it differently. I suspect every legislative leader you saw here today, if you asked them that same question, they'd say the same thing as well. In order to get a budget in a challenging situation to the finish line, it's going to require working together and a lot of compromise. And I believe we accomplished that with this budget. With that, I'm happy to take the questions that you all have. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about this process in interim? Just,
Yeah.
As also being relatively new to the process here in the state, what do those conversations look like? Are these taxes going to change in any meaningful way? Or are they kind of set as a stone and there can be like technical corrections to fix problems?
And so you're asking about the process from here to the supplemental budget, right? In terms of what's,
specifically, I think you mentioned 5814
Yeah.
And 2881.
So the answer is we'll see, right? But I think it's fair to say, I think legislators would agree, that we could spend some more time on some of those revenue bills to make sure there aren't unintended impacts. So keep in mind, when I go through the budget, I can veto a section. I don't have what we call a true line item veto. I can't pick out 5 words, right? And so there are some revenues there that I think require a closer look to make sure there are not unintended consequences. So I would not be surprised if you see some changes beyond technical changes to those revenue streams in the supplemental budget. I want to emphasize and underline, I don't want to prejudge this, right? That is, I want to be thoughtful about that, go through this with my team, work with legislators on that. But I would not be surprised if you saw some changes, more than technical changes to your question, in the supplemental budget on some of those.
But those are signed into law now?
Correct, absolutely, yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
But this is not unusual. You have trailing legislation, all sorts of things, policy and on the finance side. I just wanted to emphasize in my remarks that we'll be taking a close look at all those going in the supplemental to make sure, look, we've heard from a lot of folks in these past few weeks, and we're going to make sure that we have a lengthy conversation with folks on each of those revenue streams to make sure that that there are not any unintended consequences.
Can you give us an example?
I don't think I will right now. I just think that's the process. We're going to have plenty of time to go through that, and but there's going to be a process for that going to the supplemental for sure.
Governor, can you further explain your vetoes and how you did this and still balance the budget and avoiding a special session?
Yeah. So what I would say is, when I said we went through it line by line, I think that's a fair description of the process. It was a line by line process, which, first I'll just say, you mentioned, being new to the process. I am obviously new to the budget. I found it helpful for me. Like, I want to do it for a number of reasons. One, I thought it would help me for what's coming in the supplemental budget, or I proposed a budget for the first time, which I look forward to. Number two, I just felt that I owed it to the people of the state that that I'm looking at each item in there, right? Got a great team. They do fantastic work. But it's not dissimilar from in my AG life. If we were, filing a lawsuit on behalf of the state, my team knows I approved each one of those, right? Didn't matter how big or how small the case was. I just felt the state was filing a lawsuit against somebody. The AG should actually be the one reviewing it. So in a similar way, I felt the same way about this, that, hey, we're making important decisions for businesses and individuals on taxes and investments that impact the people of the state. And I just felt it was important that I go through those line by line. And look, it was challenging. Obviously there were some specific issues I went back and forth on a couple times. Hey, I think I might do this, change more conversations. So it was a lot of hours, but I think it was productive, and led to some additional vetoes, obviously. And I was, in doing it, sort of mindful of, what I often say to my team is, hey, this program may be really important, or this study. I think you'll see a lot of studies that got vetoed through this process, or reports. For me, I just tried to say, hey, how am I going to feel about this investment compared to if the federal government cuts Medicaid funding or cuts K through 12 education? You get the idea. Like, what's the balance there? Those are not easy decisions. And a room full of, we got 50 people in this room. 50 people I'm sure 50 people come up with 50 different budgets. That's just the nature of it. But that was my thinking and the reason to do it, and I'm glad I did.
But there were 5 different bills that you had a veto in. Can you further explain what the financial impact was there? Because obviously you're moving forward today without calling a special session.
Correct.
So what exactly did you veto in those 5 bills that you felt the state could not afford?
Oh, there's a whole list. We have numerous items that were vetoed. One example, I think I mentioned the community banks, the exemption there. The reason for that veto, for example, is because I felt the exemption provided to community banks helps something really core: affordable housing, investments in housing, people being able to afford housing. So that was another way I looked at this, Chris, was, hey, core things we were focused on. Housing was a big one. That's not a surprise to anyone who's heard me talk during my campaign or as governor. And so I felt that was one. That was one I could veto. It was its own section, right? It didn't have other revenue attached to it. So that was one where I could veto that, and it was sort of clean in that sense. It didn't bring in other items as well. So there are some limitations on the governor in Washington on what I can veto, or what the limitations might be. But we have a whole list, which I think we're providing you, of each specific veto that we went through.
What's your message to working Washingtonians who are really worried about what the tax increases are going to mean for them and their families?
Yeah, my message would be that we hear those concerns and understand those concerns, and that's why we took the time to go through the budget line by line. Number 2, what I would say is, look, inheriting a $16 billion budget shortfall was, was not the way I wanted to start as governor. And so what I would say is, I feel that we worked hard to adopt a balanced approach that preserves core programs for those Washingtonians, right? If they've got a kid who wants to do apprenticeship training or go to college, we maintain the most generous financial support for those kids of any state in the country. You heard me speak earlier about all the various programs and benefits that we preserved in this budget. So I would say to those individuals is, I hear those concerns. I hear it loud and clear. We did our best in this budget to balance our approach and also try to take an approach that sets us up for the future, right? So when I have budgets that I can propose to make sure we're doing that in a way that is like any family budget, right? We are adopting a budget that's based on actual revenue forecasts, not some inflated number that is not realistic. A family cannot assume a revenue or a salary from a family member that isn't real. So I think we're on the right track on that, while also preserving our rainy day reserve fund. So look, I understand very clearly that this will be a challenging budget for Washingtonians. There's no two ways around that. It will be. But I believe it's a balanced approach, and I think it sets us on a trajectory for a more sustainable future.
Do you have an estimate, like ballpark, of what it will cost regular Washingtonians, like a family of 4, for instance, annually?
I don't know that we have a number like that exists. I can check with the team, but I'm not aware if there, obviously it depends on many, many factors, of course, but no, I'm not aware of a specific number along those lines.
I know
Thanks.
early on, the Senate Republicans offered a no new tax increase budget proposal, and they were excited early on that you were considering it, looking at it. But then we ended up with giant tax increases. So many Washingtonians might say that you didn't keep your word. What do you say to that?
I think my word was that we need to have a balanced approach to balance this budget. I made it clear we weren't going to tax our way out of it. Rejected multiple proposals from my Democratic colleagues in the legislature on, I think first it was $21 billion and then $12 billion. So I think we got to a number on the revenue side that is balanced with billions and billions of dollars of cuts. And so we worked hard to try to find that balanced approach. And that's what a budget is. I don't get to write the budget exactly what I want any more than any legislator does. It's got to be one of compromise. And so I feel that from where we started, which was a $16 billion shortfall, and initial proposals of up to $20 billion in taxes, from where we started to where we ended up, I think was a significant improvement.
The proponents argued that it wasn't really $16 billion, you're aware. That was if
yeah.
things that had been promised were then funded instead of put off.
Well, and we delayed some investments as well, but from our standpoint, going through the budget, we view this as a $16 billion shortfall that we needed to address. And we did make billions in dollars of actual cuts to the budget. We had a press conference here early on where I think I proposed about $4 billion in cuts. Some members of my party weren't excited about that, but the final budget reflects most of those proposed reductions were taken. By the same token, the legislatures I mentioned before and want to emphasize, when they went through, they made additional reductions of their own. Some of those are challenging cuts that delay investments I think are important for kids, for example, but ones that we felt were necessary. So again, one has to find a balance. I think we'd gone deeper on the cuts right now. Those cuts would have been extremely challenging to maintain core services for our state. So look, is there a perfect answer to a situation like this? There is not, okay? And I felt my job was to make sure that we took a thoughtful, balanced approach, and at the same time, set us up for the future in a way that I think is more sustainable.
Governor, one of your suggestions was furloughing state employees.
Yeah.
1 day a month for 2 years. That idea was not taken up.
Correct.
How did you feel about that when that was on the list? Is that something that was talked about in the last 20 days?
Yeah, I guess what I would say, Drew, is, look, I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I don't get to write the budget myself, right? No legislator does. That's not the way it works. And so I understood when I was proposing, I think that was, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was part of the $4 billion in reductions initially that I proposed. Look, I was under no illusion that they would accept every single thing that I proposed, obviously. And so, you know, we have co-equal branches of government, right? That this is a give and take process. That said, I do deeply appreciate that they accepted most of those budget reductions. And that is why I tried to embrace that same concept with what they proposed for reductions, because I know how difficult that is, right? If you're proposing a reduction, there are folks who aren't happy about it, and you're going to hear from those folks. And so that was really something I tried to commit back to the legislature as well. They adopted most of my reductions. I tried to accept essentially their reductions as well. So understand why they didn't do it, but I'm comfortable with the way that they approached this for sure.
Governor, part of the legislative Democrats' proposal for the budget originally obviously was the wealth tax that you did not support balancing the budget with, but it sounds like the Senate passed a version of the wealth tax, and it sounds like those conversations will continue into next year.
Mm-hmm.
How involved do you anticipate being in those conversations, or how involved do you want to be in those conversations about a potential wealth tax?
I think what I would say is that, I mean, anything related to the budget that I propose, I'm pretty confident I'll be involved in those conversations, right? I'm a relatively hands-on guy, for better or for worse, and when it comes to a budget, I think that's my approach. And so when it comes to supplemental budget, I'm sure I'll be personally very involved, and I know many legislators have strong views. That said, I think my perspective on the proposed wealth tax was pretty clear. We talked about it in this room, I think, on more than one occasion. I remain open, as I think we said here during a press conference, if my memory is correct, remain open to what I would describe as a small, targeted wealth tax. And by that, I think I put the number $100 million a year, right? I think was the number that I used. That I'm open to because of the inevitable legal challenge that I think would be a serious legal challenge, and no doubt a conversation at the ballot box with the people of the state of Washington that, I think I'm unlikely to change my perspective that we should not be balancing our budget on an untested wealth tax that may not withstand judicial scrutiny. And that's why a targeted wealth tax, that I'm open to a conversation about, right? That can make sense because you have the court challenge, but if it doesn't go your way, you're not having a hugely adverse impact on your budget. So I guess that's, sorry for a long answer to your question. I think the shorter answer, I think you asked, hey, will those conversations go on? I'm sure they will. I have no doubt about that. They've not been part of the conversation for the past 20 days for this budget, obviously. But I understand some legislators have strong views about it. I always welcome additional conversation. Yeah.
A couple of questions on that. You mentioned the $12 billion was too much. I think that was just to the operating budget, because what you've signed today is $9.4 billion operating and another $3 billion on the gas tax. So that's $12 billion. is there something magical about that number being too much or the right amount? And then I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on why you signed a gas tax that will go up every year going forward. So
Yeah.
Washington residents can now be guaranteed of a higher gas tax every year.
Yeah, so to be clear, that the $12 billion figure that I said no to was for the operating budget, of course, right? And so, yes, if you combine those two, you get to 12 billion, but that conversation was around 12 billion in revenue for the operating budget, just to be clear. And I said that was too much, and they've come down to now about 9 billion in terms of the operating budget. You are right, you combine the gas tax, that number goes up. But to your question, Jerry, that is precisely why I thought 12 billion was too high for operating budget, because I was aware that, for example, our transportation budget, it's got some serious challenges, right? Our gas tax revenue is not what it was, right? We have some structural challenges there that are well known to all of you. And, there's going to be additional conversations, I am sure, in this next period of time before the supplemental budget, but how can we better get our arms around that challenge? The people who say Washington expect us to invest in those projects, but we have limited revenue options right now. The gas tax, unfortunately, is one of them. So look, no one's excited about increasing the gas tax, I can assure you. But that was a bipartisan solution. I want to emphasize that. I hope that's well covered. That was a bipartisan solution, and that was not easy, I can assure you, for the legislature to come together in a bipartisan fashion. I think the reason why you saw a bipartisan solution, even in a challenging situation, was because Democrats and some key Republicans understood the challenge of that budget specifically, which obviously you're very aware of. So, look, I'm mindful of the overall tax impact, but that's why I try to be very clear, in public about bringing down those early numbers that I just felt were far more than we could sustain.
But to an earlier question about you had pledged as a candidate to work on affordability.
Mm-hmm.
If one adds the taxes, the gas tax, the fees, the licenses, it's a term that the Republicans have said that Washington Democrats are taxing the joy out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that the average Washingtonian can expect life to become more expensive in this state?
I would agree that when I was campaigning, I emphasized affordability. During that campaign, we were unaware of a $16 billion budget shortfall, as you know. And so what I would say when it comes to affordability is I feel I was very clear with the legislature on bringing down what would have been significantly higher taxes, to put it mildly, down to what I think is a more balanced approach. Look, am I excited about those revenues? Of course not. But we have to balance a budget that preserves core services, that makes investments in transportation. And when you've got a $16 billion shortfall that you inherit, that's going to be a challenge. So, again, I think this budget is a balanced approach. I do not think a $16 billion cuts budget was feasible, to put it mildly. And I do think we put ourselves on a path with making changes in how we budget that will help us go forward to hopefully avoid this in the future. That's what I would say to folks when it comes to affordability, is trying to get a budget that's as lean as possible. The other thing I'll say is, look, we'll see what comes from the Trump administration. We'll see what comes with the economy. But my goal is to put us on financial footing so we're not having this conversation every single year as long as I'm governor. Some of those things are beyond our control. I don't control what the federal government's going to do when it comes to budget cuts. I don't control what's going to happen to the economy or the impact on tariffs on our economy. But I can have some control over how we manage our budget, what assumptions we use, preserving our rainy day reserve funds. And I think on that we did change how we do our budgeting. I think that's important. And those were non-negotiables for me. And I think the legislature understood that. Those were non-negotiables. I think those were improvements in our budget process that will serve us well.
If I could go back to those interim conversations and just ask if you anticipate any revenue impact on that? Will those laws bring in less revenue after those interim conversations?
That's possible, yes.
And also how it is possible?
That's possible, sure. Absolutely.
How should businesses plan for those eventual changes, especially when it comes to something like the sales tax, which is greatly expanded in places where it didn't otherwise apply, and that kind of thing?
What I can say is the business community can expect that I'll be reaching out to have conversations about the impacts on these taxes. We've had conversations before, but obviously this has been a relatively intense time the last few weeks to go through this process. So I've had some conversations. I look forward to more. And so they can expect that. I can't make any promises beyond that, right? It's a big budget. It's complex. But I would underline that we'll be having a lot of conversations with many folks across the state about this budget, if there's any changes that need to happen for the supplemental. And I will also say, look, being mindful about the challenges we are facing. There'll be other things you'll see. You know, there are things in our budget that we tend to fund budget to budget, which are very important, great programs. You know, but I've already mentioned my team, you know, we need to communicate to folks, there's no guarantee that will be in the budget for the supplemental. Just want folks to know that, right? That there is no guarantee. That doesn't mean I'm cutting it, doesn't mean I'm keeping it, but we want to notify folks, hey, you know, this program, we just want you to be aware, we've got some challenges coming up. And so, yeah, I think it's too soon to say with any more detail. We have a June forecast, we have a September forecast. We've got a lot happening with the Trump administration. We have a lot happening with the economy. So, you know, those conversations will occur, and we'll be taking a thorough approach to the budget again for the supplemental.
Governor, in regards to the cuts to specific state agencies,
Yes.
do you feel like those goals were reached at all of your agencies, and do you see any further room for any more cuts in the interim?
Yeah.
For next year?
Good question. And I appreciate you asking, because I probably should have said in my remarks how much I appreciate, look, state agencies, I asked them to, you know, propose, I think it was 6% reductions I think we had, if I recall correctly. And, you know, what I would say is I appreciate the work of agencies to make those proposals, which I know were not easy for them. So what I would say is there were significant cuts to state agencies. Looking ahead, it's a little difficult to see how much more those agencies could take, just being perfectly honest. But of course, we'll go back and review and ask for, hey, can we be more efficient across state government? But I think there was a pretty significant whack out of state agency budgets in this final document. That is clear. But again, you're just too soon to say, right? We just have to go through and have that process and work through it. And again, sorry to repeat myself, but there's a lot we don't know between now and when I propose my supplemental budget. And some big unknowns come from the federal government, that come from our economy. Those are big unknowns and will obviously dictate to a larger degree what kind of budget we're looking at next year. A couple more questions if folks have them?
You've already talked about the supplemental, and
Yeah.
how driven were you by the idea of avoiding a special session here? Or are you ruling it out at some point during this year, given the revenue forecast
Oh.
later in the year?
Yeah, I guess what I would, sort of a two-part question. In approaching for just right now, to the first part of your question, I think Chris right is what was right in front of me. I guess what I would say is, I just tried to have it's my first time doing this, right? So one thing I've learned in life is try to keep an open mind if you're doing something for the first time. And so that's why, you know, I probably kept a lot of things close, just because I didn't want to make some big public announcement that I'd have to walk back when I learned more about the budget. You know, that was an approach that I thought was appropriate for this, especially being my first time. Number two, you know, I don't have some, you know, knee-jerk avoidance to a special session, if that's what's required. So it wasn't like I was going through this saying, under no circumstances can there be a special session. It wasn't like that. But I did have the feeling when the final budget came over, before I'd had a chance to go through it, when the revenue would come down fairly significantly from the early proposals, that I felt it was likely this was a budget I could work with, right? It may not be perfect from my standpoint, right? But that it was one that I could work with. That was my general feeling when I received it. Obviously, I wanted to go through it. But I would just say in general, you know, just moving forward, I don't think anybody's excited about a special session, you know? But I guess my feeling is if a special session is needed, if it's required, then you need to have it. And we've done them before. This is not uncommon, obviously, in Washington State. I think your second point, which is, if I understood correctly, kind of looking ahead beyond this budget, but hey, between now and January, if developments happen, look, that can't be ruled out. I'm not trying to sound some alarm here. I want to be clear, right? But I just want to answer your question. I obviously can't rule that out. You know, the federal government could do something dramatic where we need to take a look at our situation. And that said, I feel we've done everything we could to prepare ourselves for that. I won't repeat myself on the rainy day reserve fund, but that is an example that I felt very strongly about. That was essentially a non-negotiable for me. You know, there were proposals to drain that. That was a non-starter for me. That was clear. And I appreciate the legislature listening to that. So I feel we've done what we can to prepare for that, and would obviously want to avoid that if at all possible.
Talking about reductions, you talked about ones that you were reviewing in the interim. You mentioned the abortion access.
Yeah.
Are there other specific ones?
I probably won't go into detail right now, but there's a couple others we'll look at. And again, I just want to emphasize, legislature did a great job. They went through, they made many tough choices. So I don't want to be critical of the choices they made. I want to be very clear about that. They made difficult choices any more than, hey, I've had to make some tough choices, and I'm sure some folks won't be happy about what I vetoed, right? I get that. But that was one that stood out to me. I'll say that. That was one that stood out to me, and, especially in a time where, I just feel we need to do everything we can to stand for reproductive freedom in our state, and I know the legislature shares that perspective. I do. And I understand where they're coming from of trying to balance a budget, so hard choices were made. But I think there'll be a lot of conversations around that between now and the supplemental. Final question, anyone? Once, twice?
I'll just
Yep.
highlight this
Yeah.
regarding the bill on police and hiring more police
Yeah.
officers, the $100 million.
Yeah.
The language that was ultimately signed does not force local jurisdictions to hire police officers. What can you say about that agreement? To not only allocate the money, but not force local jurisdictions to actually use the money to hire cops.
I'm very confident we're going to see a renewed focus and increase in the hiring of law enforcement officers. What I can say is in many conversations I had with law enforcement folks across the state, they really view this as a big step forward. Is it perfect? Of course not. Is it exactly why I would have written it? Of course not. But I believe it's a significant step forward. It'll make a big difference. And we have a lot of work to do. I think, Jerry, sorry if I'm misremembering, I think you and I were talking about this in the last day or two. I think you were asking, hey, we're 50th now per capita number of law enforcement officers. Will this move us up on the list? Look, my recollection is that we're a ways from 49th, just to be clear. I could be wrong about that, but my recollection at some point seeing the chart and realizing we're not just last, but we're some distance from 49th. That said, there are signs of improvement in this area. I think this will help. I think the training facilities that we are opening now all across the state, in Eastern Washington and in Western Washington, including in Arlington most recently, those spots are filling up, right? Those spots are filling up. More folks are going through that training because guess what? We're bringing it closer to them. They don't have to be gone from home for extended periods of time. City of Seattle, I think if I recall correctly, for the first time is not losing, right, law enforcement officers. I think there was a very slight uptick. I think all those are positive signs. So look, no one grant program is going to solve this problem, that is for sure. No one training facility is going to solve this problem, that's for sure. No one city is going to solve it, but like any big problem, which we have in this regard, it's going to take a lot of folks leaning into it, and I'm confident this will help. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate your time. Hope you all have a great day. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.